We've been working together with the military and with other security agencies to ensure that this reign of impunity of this criminal element ends. This attack on the peaceful Yelewata community is one attack too many. It's an attack on the entire nation, and we are not going to accept it. A day will come when these bandits will come to operate as they used to, and they will never return. That day drawing nearer. I can assure you that we are committed to fight this battle and win this war.
That was the Inspector General of Police of Nigeria 3 months ago after attacks in eastern Nigeria by unnamed gunmen who killed at least 100 in a village. On September 19, a Catholic priest was shot dead in Enugu, southeastern Nigeria. He was ambushed on his way back from parish duties. The story has already been written. Headlines describe it as another act of Islamic terror, another church targeted, another priest murdered.
And I can tell you, Ishmael, in the rest of the world, that's how the story is told. Nigeria is overrun by extremists, it's collapsing under the weight of violence fueled by religion. You know, the headlines are all the same. Nigeria's falling, Christians under attack, the new Islamic State is coming, or indeed it's already here.
But here at World Reframed, we ask a different question. Is that the whole story, or is the way Nigeria's crisis framed shaping how the world understands and misunderstands what's happening in the global south?
Let's start with facts. Since Boko Haram began its insurgency back in 2009, more than 19,000 churches have been destroyed or shut down, and nearly 15 million people have been displaced.
And yes, clergy are increasingly targeted. In 2025 alone, at least 15 priests were kidnapped. Since 2015, the Catholic Bishops' Conference of Nigeria has documented almost 150 kidnappings, 11 murders, and multiple disappearances.
Yeah, and it's real, and for sure it's devastating. But what's so often missing from the narrative is why this is happening and how complex the picture really is.
And you know, global reporting often boils this crisis down to Christians versus Muslims, but in reality, the perpetrators are not one monolithic force. You have Boko Haram, yes, you have ISWAP, which is the Islamic State West Africa province, but you also have armed Fulani groups clashing with farmers over land. And then there are the kidnapping syndicates, criminal gangs holding hundreds for ransom in forest camps.
Yeah, in Kaduna State's Rajan area alone, jihadist camps are believed to be holding 850 Christians hostage. Some of those may well be killed if the ransoms aren't paid. It's certainly less about ideology and more about profit.
And here's where the nuance matters. When we only frame this as a religious persecution, we risk missing how weak governance, economic desperation, and even climate change are fueling the violence.
Yeah, and that's something I'm going to be hearing a lot about today, Ishmael. I'm at the Trans-Montana Forum in Rabat, and we have actually a number of delegations from Nigeria, from some of the Sahel states here. And I think that is such an crucial part of the narrative, is the role of these states. Because advocacy groups like Inter-Society accuse some elements of the security forces of being complicit in this. And sometimes they're turning a blind eye. Sometimes it's even more sinister.
And interestingly, it blurs the line between counterinsurgency and persecution. And it raises an uncomfortable truth. Nigeria's crisis isn't just about terrorists. It's about governance failures, corruption, and the collapse of trust between citizens and the state.
Yeah, and what's so important here is the borders. Because on paper, Nigeria has one of Africa's largest militaries. It should be able to deal with this. But in reality, the insurgents can move freely across the porous borders with Niger, with Chad, with Cameroon.
And these borders indeed slow down Nigerian troops. They also get tied up in bureaucracy and checkpoints. But for their opponents, they have the rivers, the forests, the deserts, and they are all open highways for them. And their weapons and fighters flow across with very little resistance.
Yeah, because these lines, which were supposed to keep nations safe and which were drawn to define their areas, have actually become barriers for them, and they're preventing them from protecting themselves, ironically. Well, for the insurgents, there is no such obstacle.
And one issue that keeps coming to my mind is the regional collaboration to act against this canker. Where is ECOWAS? Where does ECOWAS come in? That's the Economic Community of West African States. In August, ECOWAS approved a plan to build a joint counterterrorism force, and that's made up of 260,000 troops. That will cost them $2.5 billion a year, and that's a really bold vision.
And it's badly needed. West Africa is now really the center of terrorism worldwide. More than half, 51% of all terrorist killings in 2024 happened in the region, and there are more than 1,000 insurgent groups said to be active there.
But the plan is stalled. Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso, they all pulled out of ECOWAS in January. Without them, the force is weaker, intelligence sharing breaks down, and borders become even more vulnerable.
As West African countries, we are all part of the same family, and we must resolve our problems as a family. Development is a major concern, and we must work together to achieve it. Some may think we are divided because Burkina Faso and the AES countries have withdrawn from ECOWAS, but I can tell you that is not the case. We are working together to achieve peace and development. I am here today to show solidarity with the people of Burkina Faso, to tell them they are not alone, and that we will work together to restore peace.
And so while ECOWAS delays, villages burn, and churches fall, and camps fill. And the insurgents don't wait for committees and budget approvals. And so that's why this framing matters, because when we're hearing about Christians under fire from jihadists, the answer seems to be very obvious. It's a militarized answer. Send troops, send weapons, fight. It's the war on terror, effectively. And sometimes factions within the states, most notably the army, the militaries, and in several countries that's actually the government as well at the moment, increasingly after a series of coups that we had in this area. They also want to perpetuate this narrative that the problem is jihadist groups that are keen to carve out their own caliphate.
And when we frame it, we see displaced communities needing humanitarian aid, families trapped in ransom economies, and local peace-building efforts that rarely get support.
Yeah, we see that Nigeria's size and diversity make it much more than a victim state. It's Africa's most populous nation with over 220 million people. And whether it's stable or it's unstable, causes ripples far beyond its own borders.
And too often, Africa is portrayed as a backdrop for violence, a place of endless religious wars. The global South lens forces us to ask, what about the millions of Muslims in Nigeria who also reject extremism? What about the economic drivers of conflict? What about the failures of international partners who see Africa mainly as a security threat or a source of unwelcome immigrants?
Yeah, when we reframe it, the narrative shifts, doesn't it? And we move from this new Islamic state forming to Nigeria's people are being failed. And they're being failed both by extremists, but also by their own leaders. And also by, let's be fair, a global system, which is only responding when the threat is moving northwards.
An Islamic state is taking shape in Africa, and large swaths of territories are controlled more by jihadist leaders than national authorities. Their influence is expanding, but just as in Syria and Iraq before, religion is only one part and often the smaller part of the story. Poverty, displacement, and survival are the real drivers of fracturing communities, and whatever group seems best positioned on the ground to deliver these is likely to gain the allegiance of locals. Often in the Sahel right now, that means well-organized and well-funded militant Islamist organizations. This has been World Reframed. Join us next time as we go beyond the headlines to reframe the world.